Between the Sheik and Abdullah the Butcher, who would you say is the better wrestler between those two?
Well, there's no question about the Sheik. Because the minute you touch the Abbey, he wanted to cut himself.
Yeah.
And I tell him, man, you're bleeding all over me.
Yeah.
I don't want you bleeding all over me. But the Sheik would actually take a couple bumps. And Sheik wasn't a great worker, but he had great psychology. He knew when to run. He knew when to look back and, With the Abbey, he just wanted to keep coming, and the more you hit him, and he had blades on every finger.
Yeah.
And the minute you hit him, he's bleeding all over you. I wore white boots and white trunks. I used to tell him, man, why are you bleeding so much? I said, if I get a cut or something on me. But look at him now. His head looks like a canoe.
Yeah.
I just seen him. We seen him last year at WrestleMania, but we seen him at what do you call it? Yeah, the WrestleCon. And he was in a wheelchair, can't walk. But I didn't feel sorry for him because me and him, we actually started together. We went in Vancouver together, and then when he got the big push, he kind of forgot about me. Like, I'm a little bit better than you, but he was making more money. But I always believe what goes around comes around, and it came back. He was the first millionaire in Japan. They never seen a guy like this. The minute you touch him, he's got all the and people who were actually running from him, walking down the street, they would see him and they would run across the road.
Abdullah the Butcher made a fortune as the first hardcore wrestler. He used a razor blade, cut himself, and then cut his opponent, and that's what he was known for, and it worked.
I had it.
Right.
And it doesn't show up anymore. But 25 years ago, I had it.
Yeah.
And the years that I was fighting him and Joe LeDuc. and I went to a doctor one day, and he told me, don't ever give blood to like I give blood every year to
because
the Red
it
Cross.
can be contagious.
And I said, why not? And then they told me what it was, hepatitis. And then I remember he said, and I never remember sleeping with a girl who smelled that bad, or something like that.
You can't catch it. You can't catch it. C, you can't catch from sex. It's only blood.
And I thought to myself, and when they told me it was blood, I thought about Joe LeDuc and me, the matches we used to fight each other, Abdullah, me and him. Those are the two that I fought for main event.
And I saw him cut this Indian, and they gave the Indian $15 for the match, and Abdullah showed me his blade. He used like a popsicle stick, and he would tape the blade to the popsicle stick. And I was watching him, and I just watched him, and he went out there at the second match, and when he got in the ring, he just grabbed the Indian and he just started slicing this Indian's face up and his neck and his shoulders, and my God, it was like manslaughter. And 30 seconds later, it was over, and we went back to the locker room, and I get back there and I see this Indian standing there, covered with blood from his head to his wrestling boots, literally covered in blood, and he was a dark-skinned Indian, and he was starting to turn white from losing blood. And I said, this guy is going to die. You people better call, they didn't call them paramedics back then, it was just an ambulance. I said, you better call an ambulance because this guy's going to die. He's going to lose all of his blood. And so they did. They did call an ambulance, and they stopped the bleed. They wrapped him up while they waiting for the ambulance. He was covered with this blood, and I said, Butcher, Abby, I said, why'd you cut this guy up so bad for? He's a Coleman. I had to get my heat. I had to get my heat, baby. I had to get my heat. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I'm in the main event. I said, and he said, me cutting up this Indian put some heat on me. And I said, well, yeah, you better hope the guy doesn't die. It actually kind of scared me a little bit. He may be actually mentally ill and obsessed. he might actually be obsessed with cutting people to the point that he cannot restrain or refrain from slicing people for no reason whatsoever.
I don't respect Abdullah at all. Cutting yourself and cutting somebody else and bleeding on them and being sick and not telling people, you're a piece of shit.
For Abdullah the Butcher, you told me off camera his style just wouldn't have meshed well for you here in Memphis.
I didn't like him either. I thought he might have been a little touched in the brain. I mean, in this business, if you aren't a talent and view yourself the exact same way as if you're in Hollywood making a movie. In the territory days, we didn't have UFC. And so I didn't mind telling any wrestler however big they were, who they were. You're in a phony business and you're trying to act like a tough guy. That's bullshit. You're in theater. Act like a professional.
His restaurant, he overcharged me there. He'd give me small portions. And he would stick the knife in your back like he would everybody. But that's just the wrestling business, and I wanted in, and that's the way it is.
Who hooked you up with going to Puerto Rico to wrestle Abdullah the Butcher?
I forget. Okay, I heard them guys.
They had just killed somebody when he.
Razor Brody?
Yeah, Bruiser Brody. Yeah.
I took police officers with me. I took
Was that part of your deal?
when I go to the bathroom, my dudes walk with me.
Yeah.
I had 2 police officers. Homeboy, the dude, Brian Boyd. He was the chief of police for Los Angeles Police Department. Back then he was like a lieutenant. Yeah, so it was 22,000. When we got that 22,000.
Yeah, it's still on the internet, that match. Were you at all? You probably didn't know this, but Abdullah had like a reputation of cutting people without asking them in matches.
Oh yeah, he didn't cut me.
Yeah, because you had the cops.
Yeah, he got paid. I think he got paid $5,000. I got paid 22. I'm going to get. So I found a way to go get that money, because they told me just hurt somebody, right?
Yeah.
I grew up in Compton, so I seen Crip and Blood shootouts at my high school. I watched people get killed at nightclubs. I used to be a bouncer. I mean, you can't scare me with that. I'm just using wisdom.
Yeah.
So I took the police with me, and if I went to the bathroom to take a piss, they went. And my dude always had his gun out. He just had it. When I was around them cats, they always had their gun out, just down.
Right.
Because when he felt that spirit, that he needed to let them know.
Yes, I am, and I see Abdullah the Butcher, and he's obviously raking his forehead and his the top of his head and cutting himself, which he quite frequently did, which was every match. And it's in slow motion, and now I see, yeah, now he's taking whatever he was using on his head, and he's pounding Devin's head with the cutting instrument, that whatever he was using. So, and if obviously Devin was not aware of this, and it was going to happen, but it's not the first time that somebody like Abdullah has done this, and it's totally uncalled for and not necessary, especially if a fella doesn't know this is going on. But I've seen Abdullah do this before, and he actually did it to a ring announcer in Chattanooga, Tennessee one time. A fella, he went to the ring, and the guy was making the announcement, and Abdullah takes the whatever he had taped on his fingers and sliced this guy across the head, and for no reason, and the guy was literally in tears and was deathly afraid, and was afraid from then on of even being around the wrestlers. So, to do something like that's absolutely unnecessary. I mean, if a guy wants to desecrate his own flesh, then let him do it, but you shouldn't take advantage of someone else that way.
Yeah, Abdullah came on the show. I didn't give him permission to cut me. As far as the legalities go, my legal department won't let me say much else other than the fact that I didn't have to be hospitalized, but he certainly surprised me on the show with what he did. And the only other thing is we wanted him to replace my suit, and we tried to contact his people and never heard back. But that's all I can really say about it.
Abdullah cutting up the young
Kids, yes.
You've known Abdullah for a lot over the years.
I met him in '68 in Australia.
Did you notice a lot over the years that he would take advantage of wrestlers and
Young guys, yes. Referees, anyone, extras that came in, he'd come in and that finger would hit them. That finger, but of course he took advantage of a lot of guys. A lot of guys brought him in because they knew they'd draw money, but they didn't realize bang, what Abby was about.
You simply tape the blade in circles around and secure it to your finger, and there it is. The blade is taped to your fingers and taped to your hand, and you simply use it, and it's as simple as that. It's not brain surgery.
And we're going to talk about Billy Graham, superstar Billy Graham, who's been a pretty big part of your life for the last couple of years. What's your relationship like with Billy Graham, and how did you meet him?
Billy Graham, actually, I met him because later on, we won't get into this too much, there was a movie on it called This Is Hannibal, a documentary. It won 3 awards. Basically, I finally did get a WWE contract after years of toiling away at learning my craft, 8 years actually, lots of hard work, and it ended up being taken away due to me, unfortunately, having the hepatitis C virus active in my system, which it is not anymore. I went through a terrible treatment after losing my contract. It appeared like the treatment was going to work while I was on the treatment. You had to wait until 6 months after the treatment to find out whether it worked or not. And it didn't work in the end. So I was devastated. I thought my life was ruined. I was suicidal. I did not want to live. So this friend of mine from the gym, who I personal trained, suggested that I just go public about my case, because if I went public about it, maybe someone will come out of the woodwork to help me. So I ended up going public about it, but when I wanted to go public about it, I made a video to go public about it. So because the way I caught it, that was proven in court that it was transmitted, was actually from being cut with a hepatitis C infected razor blade in a professional wrestling match by another wrestler, Abdullah the Butcher, Larry Shreve, without my permission or consent. And no, that's not a normal risk of going into a professional wrestling match. You don't expect to be cut with a hepatitis C infected razor blade with fresh hepatitis C infected blood on it multiple times in a professional wrestling match. That's just not an accepted risk. And if that were to happen as an assault on the street, you'd be arrested and you'd be in jail. So I wanted to come out as credibly as possible about this. So I got some interviews with some professional wrestlers that I had become friends with over the years, such as the Honky Tonk Man and Lanny Poffo, and there were some other wrestlers in there who I'd worked with, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Sylvain Grenier. I think there was even footage of me amateur wrestling with Olympic gold medalist for Canada, Daniel Legally, in the first video I put out to kind of tell very briefly my story of how I had hepatitis C and how at that time I believed I caught it, because at that time I didn't prove it in court yet. It still took me a good year of a legal battle just to get Abdullah's hepatitis C positive genotype 2 blood results. But how I met Billy Graham is because I had heard from being a wrestling fan and reading his book and watching his DVD and knowing all about him, that he had a liver transplant due to hepatitis C. So I ended up getting in contact with him for the documentary, and when he heard about my story, he really sympathized with me And then he saw some of my wrestling matches, and he even sympathized with me more because he found me entertaining as a wrestler. But we really had that hepatitis C connection. He sympathized with me so much that he eventually ended up getting me a doctor's appointment with his liver specialist, who was Dr. Hector Rodriguez, who's based in Phoenix, Arizona, who's a world-renowned liver expert. And he took a look into my hepatitis C situation, which I was told in Canada there would be no medical cure for 5 to 8 years. This is about a year or two after I was told this, that I flew to Phoenix, had the test done, and this doctor recommended a new experimental treatment called Insivec triple therapy. It had been effective on genotype 1 patients, so it might be worth trying on me. He was testing it on other genotype 2 patients. It wasn't approved, but he believed it would work. So he suggested that I do this. I took the findings back to Canada, took it to a second opinion liver specialist. That liver specialist conferred with some other liver specialists from around the world. She's Dr. Linda Scully from the Ottawa Hospital, another world-renowned liver specialist. She said it wouldn't be covered by the government, but she would put me on this experimental treatment. I then went through a hellacious 36-week treatment that was by far the worst 36 weeks of my life, without question. The side effects I underwent were horrible. And just to fast forward a little bit, that treatment, it was effective on me. After 6 months of being off the treatment, going through all that hell, literally fighting day to day not to kill myself while on that treatment because the side effects were so bad, and literally not only the medical side effects of the treatment, but the effects of having to be off work, not earning money while on that treatment, and the cost of the medication, which ended up being the equivalent to around $80,000, was just so much stress and pressure on me. And I had friends turn their backs on me during that time. One of my workplaces actually terminated me from my job, even though I was on sick leave during that time. So my world was just crumbling, but I fought through it. And yeah, I did end up being cured, so that was great. Very great accomplishment. But because the side effects were so bad for this medication, it was never actually ever approved for genotype 2 to my knowledge, let alone approved in Canada, and it was taken off the market. So it's not even on the market anymore. For one reason, because it's too expensive for most people to afford. The other reason, the side effects are so terrible, which one of the things that got me through the treatment was I did weekly updates, and since I was public about hepatitis C, I posted the updates every week on YouTube, and other people who had been through the treatment and other people with the disease were watching them and supporting me, talking to me along the way, giving me tips of how to deal with the side effects. So I had a lot of support, some good friends and some great family members supporting me. So I really, everything helped for that second treatment. And Billy Graham, of course, he helped me through. At one point, I actually I couldn't sleep anyways. One of the side effects for the medication was you can't sleep, that's just one side effect, is not being able to sleep. So try staying awake for sometimes maybe only sleeping 10 or 12 hours in a whole week. Try to see how you'll feel on that, let alone all the medical side effects, like the never-ending itching and the bug under the skin itching. So many horrible side effects, the 45-pound weight loss. But anyways, at one point I even drove to Phoenix, literally not even sleeping, drove across the country of the United States to see Billy Graham. So that was actually the highlight of my treatment.
Just to finish off the hepatitis C subject, you end up being cured finally, and you actually end up winning a lawsuit against Abdullah the Butcher. What are your thoughts on this versus having a WWE contract?
Well, it's quite funny because the lawsuit that we won in the Ontario Superior Court of Justice, he was found guilty of negligence, assault, and battery. Negligence, of course. He has a history of Hep C, but whether you have Hep C or not, you know that cutting someone with a razor blade with blood on it is dangerous. So it's definitely negligent to do that. Assault, he definitely cut me without my permission. And of course battery as well. So that's what he was found guilty of, and the judgment was recently upheld in the state of Georgia, as if it was a judgment in the United States. So yes, the award was $2.3 million, but you have to remember that I've paid thousands in legal fees so far, and of course the lawyers get a cut of that, and he's yet to pay it as well. And but basically, compared to a WWE contract where the highest paid guy is making the millions a year, but more than that, it was my lifelong dream, and I at least wanted a shot at the big time, at least a shot after all my hard work to see if I would make it or not, at least a chance.
I don't believe there's any comparison to the difference of the simple commingling of blood as opposed to someone cutting you with a razor blade that they have already cut themselves with, and then purposely cutting you with that same identical razor blade that they have just inserted barbarically into their own forehead, and then cutting your head with the same razor blade. I think the odds are astronomically higher that if that person has hepatitis C, it is a given you're going to receive hepatitis C from that blade that he just put in his head.
You never expect someone to start taking a blade and a razor blade that they use on themselves or wherever it might have come from, start using it on you. No, it was never a normal practice at all by any means.
Especially in this day and age.
Well, in this day and age, yeah, it's one of those things where I definitely wouldn't want somebody doing that to me, and if they did, I'd be quite upset.
That whole thing, whatever happened with Abby, and Abby's a piece of shit. He's always been a piece of shit. I've known him since '83, man. He's a no good motherfucker. You know what I mean? You know, and he's always been like he is. You know, I don't know. I didn't know who you were or any of that, and I kind of figured that with him. But
he would have been fine once he found out. If he had kept wrestling once he found out he had it, but just stopped bleeding himself, that would have been a lot better. Because he wouldn't have been he could have still made money. It could have just been the other guy bleeding.
You could have been in WWE right now in the good spot for years. How long ago? I don't know how long ago. It's been a while.
They signed me in 2009, so it's almost been 10 years since I.
Close to 10 years. You could have been signed. Yeah. Well, what the hell, man?
Yeah, I had a lot of contact with Abdullah. But Abdullah he was the type of person. He wanted to be the only one that could bring blacks into Japan. Now he did that for many, many years. And so I remember when they fired Abdullah. That was during the time I worked with Magnum TA. And they fired Abdullah and they brought me in. So they brought me in, and after when I went back the second time, they told me that Robert wanted me to let him beat me. And I told him, he can't beat me. I wouldn't have minded later on, but I hadn't been there but a couple of times. And he said, please, stay out from all of let me beat him. And I told him, no, not now. So he must have didn't like, I know he didn't like it. So we got in the ring and we worked with each other, and I think it was a count out. And next time they brought me back in, but they brought Abdullah in too. When I knew anything, Baba had cut my money without telling me. I
Abdullah sitting right there trying to get me on his wagon, baby. That's what he's standing for. Abdullah, he's up no good, big son of a gun.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates. Support us on patreon.com for $1.99 a month to watch our full shoot interviews ad-free and help our channel grow. Follow us on Twitter at the Hannibal TV for instant updates.